Hey guys, so it's Christmas break and I'm using my time while I'm watching kids to kind of go through my fishing stuff. And as I'm doing that, I've kind of had it in my mind, I wanted to make a very simple video about bobbers because that's something that everybody who's starting fishing uses, but there's so much cool information that you can apply from just bobbers and how to use them. So I'm doing a very simple video about how to use bobbers and the basics of what kind of bobber to use. So let's take a look at this real quick. Okay, I know, be very jealous of my production value here. So we're talking about spring bobbers and clip bobbers. Now, I did a separate video on slip bobbers, and that's kind of a different thing. These are bobbers that actually clip to your line and stay on the spot that you clip it, where slip bobbers are adjustable in a different way. You can catch that video. So here's what we have. There's basically three kind of bobbers, and I'm going to start with the first one. These are plastic round bobbers, and I don't have a picture of them because I don't own any of these. When I was a little kid, my parents would buy me fishing gear, and they would get that red and white plastic bobber that clips onto your line, and I would go use it. In the places that I fished, there were lots of cement walls and rocks, and I would cast it. It would hit a rock, get a crack in it, and then the next time I cast it, the thing would sink, and then I would have to throw it away. So I don't use those plastic bobbers anymore. I think they're a waste of money, to be honest. And nowadays, we have something a little more effective, foam bobbers. So this is a good example of this. It looks just like the old plastic one, except this thing is solid foam. You can beat this against walls and you can see. I probably have. And these won't crack. They'll keep floating until you've worn them down to almost nothing, which I've never had happen. And they come in a variety of sizes. So that's a pretty big one. That's a little bigger than a golf ball. Here's some smaller ones. These are ones, and you can see the one thing they have in common, this has got a little piece of hardware on it, so ignore that. It's got a clip on the top and a clip on the bottom. And you just clip this to your line, and however much line is below it is how deep you present your bait. So I put down not often, and here's the thing. These bobbers are nice, but all they tell me is, I'm going to go over to my little lake here. Here's my lake, see my fish in my water. This bobber, when I get a bite, all it's going to do is go down or bob. And all it does is tell me a fish is biting your line. It doesn't give me any other information. So they're durable, but they don't give you any information except a fish is biting. There is a better kind of bobber to use, and I have switched almost exclusively over to these. And I refer to them, this is my third kind, stick bobbers. And here's some of the benefits of them. They are not quite as durable, but stick bobbers tell you when fish are biting, of course. They also give you information on the depth, and I'm going to show you how that works. So let's take our stick bobber over to the lake. And if I've got this set up correctly, my stick bobber is there, my bait's underneath, and when a fish bites, it's going to go down. Sometimes the fish will pick up the lure and swim up. This bobber will do something that the round doesn't do. It's going to tip over like this, and that's telling me something has lifted up on my bait. So I would know this bite happens, where if I'm using those round bobbers, I wouldn't know anything was happening. So right away, this gives me a better strike indication than the round bobber. So let's look at, I'm going to flip to my next page here, and we're going to look at the basic rig and how you can use this to determine the depth that you're fishing. So our basic rig, and I'm going to lay one bobber right here just to say, okay, so we've got our bobber, and then a certain amount of line, however deep I want to set this. And then right here, I've got a sinker. Now, the thing about this sinker, the sinker needs to be heavy enough that when it's on my lake, it will make the bobber stand up, but not so heavy that it makes it sink. My sweet spot is a bobber that's floating like this. So the bigger the bobber, you could get away with a bigger split shot. I use fairly small ones on bobbers like this, and you just want that bobber standing in the water like that. This is ready to tell us all kinds of information. From the sinker, I usually go 6 to 8 inches, and then whatever hook and bait that I'm using, which this depends on the species that you're fishing for. So some things about this. Going to slide over here. I write my notes down so I remember what I want to tell you. These are good up to about 6 feet deep, and if you can imagine, you've got this bobber sitting here. You've got 6 feet of line, and this sinker and this hook, and now you try and cast that. Well, this bobber is at the end of your fishing pole, and you've got 6 feet of line, and that's kind of hard to cast. If you have to use a bobber deeper than that, you're probably going to want to watch the video on slip bobbers and how to do that. Okay, they're good up to about 6 feet. Okay, and I made a note here. Not all stick bobbers are the same. This stick bobber, if you look, there is no weight on this bobber. Okay, that means this will lay flat if there's no weight. It'll be at the surface of the water and it'll be laying flat. When I add a sinker, now it's ready to tell me information. Some stick bobbers, and this is a good example, this is a stick bobber, but you see where I'm pointing with my finger, that's a weight on here. So no matter how you cast this, how you set this up, it's always going to stand up. Okay, I don't use these very often because it's robbing me of the one piece of information that stick bobbers are so great for, which is setting your depth. Okay, I know this one's got one. Many of my smaller ones do. I've got some like this that have them, and I don't use them a whole lot. I try and stick with the ones that are unweighted. So let's go on and let's talk about what's so cool about these baits. I mean, these bobbers. Okay, so I'm going to go on to my next page here and how we take this setup of a bobber, a sinker, and a hook, and how we use that to determine the depth. Okay, so here's my first example. Okay, if I cast it out and my bobber's laying flat, I want you to see what's going on here. I've got a loose line, my sinker is laying on the bottom, and my bait is laying on the bottom. And because this sinker is not applying weight to stand the bobber up, I know I have too much line right here. I need to shorten this up to get my bait and my sinker off the bottom. Typically, I want to present it right above the bottom, a couple inches above. So this is wrong. I put a big no. So here's another thing. Now, you can get your bobber standing up like this by setting it very short. But typically, I put not often. Typically, when I'm fishing, my fish are down around the bottom area, hanging on the weeds, and then there's an area of kind of dead water. It doesn't make sense to present my bait there, except for certain fishing situations. But most of the time, this doesn't really work for me either. What I want is, I want my bobber standing up. I want my sinker off the bottom, and that's why the bobber's standing up. And I want my hook a few inches off the bottom. So what we do is this. I'll cast out, and if I get this, I'm going to shorten the line and I'm going to cast again. And I'm going to shorten this line. And what I'm looking for is the point that that sinker stands up. And that means the sinker stands the bobber up. That means this bobber is now bearing the weight of the sinker, and that hook is just, as I said, 6 to 8 inches more. So as soon as I find this spot, I'll slide it up 6 or 8 inches, and then I'm presenting like this. Okay, the trick about these, if you've got too much line out, your bobber's telling you, because it's flat, there's no weight there. I slide it up maybe a foot at a time, and when I get it standing up, I'll adjust it to get it just right so that my bobber, like on this picture, is right above the bottom. Okay, that's what's so great about the stick bobber. Okay, we use these for bluegills, we use these for bass, we use these for pike, we use these in rivers, ponds, moving water, still water. This is my go-to bobber, and that's why, because I can get this depth information from this bobber. Okay, I know it breaks my heart a little. I have a very special spot in my heart for all those plastic bobbers. Right now in my life, that special spot is my trash can, but I typically stick with these stick bobbers. Sometimes I'll use these round bobbers if I'm fishing in an area that it's just going to be bluegills or tiny nibbles, but I don't really use these very much. Even this bobber works better than those do. So anyway, I hope that's helpful for you. Maybe you're going to go shopping, pick up some stick bobbers. You're going to mess around with the weights to find that perfect weight where it is standing up but not sinking. And then when you're fishing, you can start adjusting that weight so it's not on the bottom, it's not on the top, it's just right. So I hope that's helpful for you. It's a very simple concept, but someone just had to tell you, and I hope I just did that. Hope you enjoy. Tight lines, guys. See you later.